All right. So, John, I know you're having a great time. We laugh a lot. And I want to share something that I found. And I see a lot of things come through my LinkedIn and my social media feeds and stuff. And I saw this poster by this gentleman, Dr. Oliver Degnan, Degnan, and he did this. What is it called? It's when you do a
Infographic.
poster, an infographic, and he did an infographic on about how you can be kind. Okay, as a person, you can be a kind person and still do these things, right? So Dr. Degnan seems to be more of a life coach, career coach, life coach. I wrote these and I thought we should maybe go through these, talk about them, get some perspective.
Apply
You
into the
know, I
workplace.
actually I actually agree with probably all of them, but you said you may not. So I'll be curious to see what you don't agree. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so let's just launch into it, folks. The poster, and we could we'll maybe figure out a way to put this on in the notes or whatever. But the headline says you can be kind and still. So the first one was you can be kind and still say no without over explaining or feeling guilty for protecting your capacity. And if I can just launch into that one, John, I have a problem saying no. I have a problem saying no with friends, but I have a problem saying no at work. And I take on more, and I don't know why. I don't know if I want to look like I'm like I can't fail, or that I'm tougher, or maybe saying no is is weakness, or if I do say no, I do find myself explaining as to why I can't. Then it comes across as excuses. So a lot of times I won't say no. I usually say, all right, I'll figure it out, or let me take that on, or I'll get back to you.
So you say yes a lot.
I do. I do.
Yeah, and I want to go back just to something in the beginning. And I think one of the things we hear a lot from friends and coworkers and clients and all these things is that kindness seems to be slipping away.
Uh huh.
And I think if you think of kindness as, well, I'm just going to do nice things for everybody, I think what we're saying here is maybe that's not the case, right? We can still be kind and say no because we have to take care of ourselves, right? And so I think understanding our capacity
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what we can do and what we can't do isn't amount of like I'm not saying no to you. I'm saying yes to me,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a really important lesson. I think kind of looking at that. And so I would let me ask you some questions since you have a hard time saying no. How does that impact you when you've said yes a lot of times? How does that impact you in your work, in your personal life, and what's going, how does that
Yeah.
kind of
It
show up?
it basically causes me to do extra work outside of the scope of what would be considered a normal work day, let's say.
Yeah.
Or I find myself trying to squirrel away time to do certain things. And the interesting thing is when I've completed everything and I have extra time for myself, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do with all my extra time because I'm so used to working for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Work, 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 work. And so, yeah, so that's, and you talk about kindness, and there is, the poster and infographic is about you can still be kind and say no. You can still be
Yeah,
kind and do these other things. And I think it's really a great lesson for HR and for good leadership that really the idea is not about being nice or being mean. A lot of times it comes down to being clear, fair, consistent, and being human. And
yeah.
and I have to figure out a way to say no, because a lot of times when I say no and then I say no and it comes across as
Yeah, because you're
mean.
saying it because you're frustrated and you're saying it. So A couple things that I talk about in my time management course. One of them, it's your responsibility, like whoever it is, right? And I'm not pointing to you, Chuck, but I think for all of us, we own our time. That's our time. We get to decide what we're going to do with it. We need to know the company's priorities. We need to know the team's priorities. We need to know all that. But I do think one of the things we teach is how to say no, how to say yeah, how to say no and yes at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes with me and says, John, I need to meet with you, I could say, well, yeah, sure, I can meet with you. Let's do it tomorrow. I'm in early. Let's do it at 7:30 in the morning. I used to use that at work all the time because I used to go into work early and I'd be like, here. And what I found is all of a sudden people are like, well, it's not that important. I'll catch you another time. I'm like, I'm giving you my time.
Yeah.
It may not be convenient for you, but that's when I'm available. The other thing that you can do is I can do that, right? Especially this is great for like a peer or somebody comes to you. I can do that, but could you get me help over here? Or if I do that, what should I not do? Right.
Yeah.
And so kind of balancing that and kind of looking at some of those things can be great time management skills and learning to say no by saying yes, or by saying yes by saying no. Right. So kind of getting that across, I think for me, that's what I kind of teach is like, you don't have to say it's your time, you own it. You have to learn how to say no, why it sounds like you're saying yes, right? That skill set is so important.
So it's interesting you say that. And to wrap up this one segment, we're talking about taking on extra workload. That's where my mind was going. But in my job as an HR director, I do need to say, no, we cannot do that. And you are correct. I don't like saying no, but there are ways to say that. You know, let's say a manager is asking me, hey, make an exception for maybe attendance or scheduling or the grooming guidelines, right?
Right.
And I could say, look, I understand why you're asking, but we need to apply the policy consistently. And another thing about HR I always try and get across is I don't want to be the department of no, right? No, no, no. And I think that's probably why I got away from using that term. But a lot of times, as going back with along the lines of what you said, is, you know what? If we're going to do that, these are the things we need to put in place.
Right.
Boom, 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 boom. So I don't say no, but I basically say, I don't. Your idea may be crazy. Your idea may be crazy. So to get to crazy, we have to do this as a. And sometimes people will say, they'll tap out. So all right,
I'm not going to do that.
You can still be kind, or you can be kind and still be honest. And he says, even when the truth is uncomfortable but necessary. And I think a lot of times in my job, you have to be honest, but you're trying not to hurt people's feelings. And I have learned the hard way, and I've learned as I have matured in my career that it's probably better to be honest, not brutally honest, because that doesn't play well, but being honest and being straight up. Because a lot of times you beat around the bush and the person still doesn't understand what's going on. And you just got to come out and say, look, your breath stinks.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you think about that, I mean, that breath example is a great example, but when you think about honesty, how far does that go, especially in your role in HR, right? Because somebody could come to you and say, hey, I heard a rumor that the company's being sold. And you know that's true, but you've been told very explicitly not to say anything.
Yeah.
And so how does that kind of honesty play out? Like, how do you deal with that conflict there?
Sure. Well, you don't want to lie, but sometimes you have to basically say, I don't know for sure. I've not, I don't know. I mean, you hear rumors all the time. I hear rumors. It may or may not be true. And I have to tell you, John, even if I knew it were true, I couldn't really share that information with you. And that has pretty much always worked in my career, because I've never had anyone come back and say, you lied to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, to that point, I think establishing the boundaries, establishing the guardrails of the HR or the leadership, supervisor, manager to say, look, there's going to be times that I have information that I am not allowed to share with you. I will
Mhm.
share it with you first as soon as I can, but up until that point, right? And so having those guardrails early on and letting people know, like, look, there's going to be things that I can't share with you. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because of that's the requirement. We can't get it out, rumors and that kind of stuff. And but I think it's setting those guardrails early on to be like, hey, here's the level of honesty. I'm going to be as honest with you as possible, but there's going to be things that I can't share with you.
Yeah. And so if I could play on that as we wrap this concept up, being honest, even when the truth is uncomfortable, we've talked many times about performance conversations where managers avoid telling the truth
Yeah,
until
yeah.
the situation becomes a termination, right? And the kind thing, the honest thing would have been to tell the employee earlier. Hey, here's not working. Here's what needs to change.
The
Here's
right
how we
thing to
can
do.
support you, but laying it out.
Yeah, it's not
So,
only the kind thing to do, it's the right thing to do, right? I mean,
yeah.
right, and that's performance management. And one of the things that I've been working on is thinking about performance management. And I'm feeling pretty good. Like I have this framework that I think people can use to be better. And I realize I think the challenge for most managers is how do we communicate that?
Yeah.
And I think like we get into a lot of conversations around, oh, how do I give feedback? How do I coach somebody? How do I do this? And I'm like, the conversation's the same, right? The conversation's the same. Maybe the energy's different, that kind of stuff, but it's really the same. And so a difficult conversation can be coaching, can be feedback, can be mentoring, but having those in a way that respects and values that person at the same time delivers the message.
Yeah. So I guess the possible lesson here is providing clarity is kinder than just silence,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. 100%.
So, all right. So the next concept, as I'm looking over here, is you can still be kind and set boundaries, without needing others to approve or understand them. That's kind of more of a personal thing. I think there are ways to convert this to leadership, right? Especially when it comes to managing employees. Maybe it comes to managing others in the workplace that are workplace bullies, maybe at your level or above. Although it's a little tougher for one of your bosses is a bully, but your coworkers are bullies. You can definitely uh, set boundaries. And then, of course, in personal life too. And a boundary is, hey, this is my boundary, and 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 I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to check, but I have a boundary, and if you cross it, basically this will happen, or this is how I will respond. So letting people know. What do you think about that? Boundaries. In other words, I
Yeah.
don't need you to approve it. They're my boundaries.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, right, it goes to your values and what's important to you and that kind of stuff. And I think there are different types of boundaries. So there's a physical boundary, right? And so by that, I mean, some people are big huggers, some people aren't, right? Some people don't want to shake their hands. Those are boundaries. You just respect them, right? And if somebody does, you don't make a big deal about it. They're like, no, sorry, I don't shake hands. Okay, great. That's fine, right? But there's also that mental, like, call out, kind of that mental trap of like saying certain things and saying there. And I think just being really honest right away, like, oh no, that's not my pronoun, or this is that language I'm not going to be acceptable around me, right? And just holding to that, right? Those are acceptable boundaries. I think we forget that sometimes, like, well, just because they have a boundary doesn't mean that I can't have a boundary, and just kind of being really clear about it and going, okay, this is the way we work together. And then sometimes those boundaries disintegrate, like they just kind of break down because I get comfortable with that person and that kind of stuff. And then other times they get stronger and like, no, this is it. But I think the key is, and I was talking about this in my emotional intelligence class today, is once you have to set those boundaries early and often. Because as soon as you let somebody do something, then they're going to assume that's okay. Even if it wasn't comfortable for you, they're going to be like, oh, well, it must be comfortable, and that's who I am, and I'm going to give them a hug. And I know it's hard, especially that first week on the job or that first job in that new promotional role. You have to set those clear boundaries.
Yeah. So let me take it up a notch here, more than the hug. Setting boundaries. Let me tell you how it comes into play in the HR office, okay? Or even in a manager's office. A lot of times an employee wants to kind of come in and pull us HR or pull the manager into a drama cycle, right? They want unlimited access. They want to relitigate every decision. They want HR to become their personal advocate against maybe a manager. And so HR and managers, you need to understand you can set these boundaries and where you are still empathetic and you feel for the person and you feel for the situation without becoming emotionally hijacked. You can listen, take the concern seriously without becoming that employee's emotional dumping ground or even personal attorney. So anyways, I think that plays beautifully into some of your thoughts also.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Again, right, it's just, I think it's understanding what your boundaries are, right? That self-awareness. And I think that comes hard sometimes. And so I think people end up being flexible and then they're like, oh no. And I was thinking about a boundary of, I leave every day at 5:30.
Yeah.
Unless the building's on fire, I leave 5:30 every day. That's my boundary. I'm leaving at 5:30. I'm still going to do the work. I'm going to get everything done. But being home with my family is more important to me than anything else, right?
Absolutely.
Setting those boundaries, right?
And that's perfect. Setting boundaries without needing others to approve them or understand them. And you're getting the work done. You're doing your job. Who cares if people are like, oh, they're leaving at 5 and I'm going to leave at 5:30. Anyways.
Yeah.
I got that. So you can still be kind and feel your emotions. Okay. So, without letting them dictate your behavior or your decisions, you can still be kind, but still feel your emotions. I
want to rescue you here.
Yeah, no, I like that because I got to tell you, that is something that sometimes, I try and I work so hard at that self-control. All right. But I see it a lot of times where managers become angry because an employee disrespected them. And I hate that term, but I see that, maybe they walked off the job or they refused an assignment, or they embarrassed them in front of another employee. And a lot of times the manager wants, we got to write them up. We got to get rid of them. We need to terminate them. And in HR's world, we need to kind of slow that down. So I'm curious, you were going to rescue me, but I have some thoughts. So talk to me about what you were going to say.
Well, again, I think I'm not rescuing you like you need rescuing, but I think you seem to be like, how do I say this in a way that makes sense and that kind of stuff, right? And so we spend a lot of my time when I'm teaching emotional intelligence, understanding what I call the behavioral algorithm.
Okay.
Right. And so the behavioral algorithm states that our behaviors are directly correlated to our success. Right. And so getting that success and doing those things and making that happen, but our emotions influence our behaviors. Right. And I think we can feel our emotions, but own our behaviors.
Okay.
Right? And so I can be angry. That doesn't give me permission to throw something across the room. I could be frustrated with a coworker. That doesn't mean I can make a snide comment about it. Right. And so understanding, hey, I'm allowed to have my emotions. I'm allowed to feel these emotions, but that doesn't give me a right to behave in an unprofessional manner at work.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where HR people really, actually, I think, do a really good job here. And managers, senior leaders need to understand this. And there are times where I'll look at someone and I'll say, hey, look, I understand why you're upset. And I'm not taking that away. I'm not making an excuse. You feel that, and I understand that feeling, but we need to separate that emotion from the facts, right? And acknowledge those feelings, then move to that evidence, policy, consistency, and documentation. And you kind of said it, or you said it exactly. And I want you to repeat it. I'm going to say facts first, feelings second, but in a way the feelings are still there. And you said, can you repeat what you said there about?
I said that you're allowed to feel the emotions, but you have to own the behaviors.
There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Feel
So to
emotions.
me, I don't think it's facts and emotions, right? I don't think facts follow emotions. I think emotions are facts. They're giving you information, they're providing that to you. But again, it comes down to what's the right behavioral decision in that, right? And so if I'm frustrated, right, and I come to Chuck and I'm like, Chuck, I'm really frustrated. Julie didn't do what I asked her to do. I just think we need to get rid of her. Chuck could say to me, and I would assume he would, John, I get that you're feeling frustrated. Let's look at the observable behaviors. What are we seeing? Let's compare that to our standard and what we've done, right? And so what Chuck really is doing in that moment is getting me out of that reactionary brain and trying to get me into that responsive brain and making those better decisions. And I think that's what plays out. And that's why emotional intelligence is such this powerful career helper, because once we can understand and have self-awareness and have self-regulation and help understand what other people may be frustrating, we can manage that so much better with empathy, with motivation, and kind of get through some of that stuff.
I love it. I love it. That's great. And I will just wrap this up by saying, if you're upset, doesn't mean you can't show that you're upset. Doesn't mean show that you're angry or you're passionate or you're what's the word, disappointed. But to go and start screaming and feel the emotion and act out on the emotions that you may be feeling, you've got to temper yourself. You've got to meter that. So that's great. Great discussion. The final point, and there's 10 points here, but I wanted to do 5 today and then maybe 5 next week, was you can still be kind, or you can be kind, but still make tough decisions. And he says, make tough decisions without delaying, just to keep everyone comfortable. And that is probably something that I've known people earlier in their career, they could do that and they move on, right? Business, what's best for the business? What's the best decision? Move on. It is something that I, even with all my years, have had to grow into, because making tough decisions in my world may end someone's employment. Okay. And there are so many employee relations with that, but you can make those tough decisions and still be kind, right? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm probably one of those people that are like, all right, let's make the decision. Let's move on. Understand, I think, right? And so understanding that there's empathy on there and understanding like it's, you could still make the tough decisions and be empathetic. Mm-hmm. You can still make the tough decisions and understand the impact it's going to have on the individual. And so I think when you're thinking about tough decisions, you're probably thinking about, in your world anyway, like, oh, HR's got to let people go, or we're not going to put resources to this project. We're going to put them over here. You can do that with empathy, with kindness, and expressing like, this is why we're doing it helps, right? And so again, you can do it with clarity. You can do it with kindness. It's just, I think those decisions need to be made. The faster they're made, I don't think like, oh, we're just going to hold off and we're not going to wait. Unless there's something that we don't know that's coming down the road, then we wait. Otherwise, it's better to make the decision right away and then just make sure when you're communicating it, you're doing with kindness and understanding that it's going to impact people's lives.
Yeah,
I
you're right.
remember I was tasked with closing down a scene shop for a company I worked for. And so I got to fly out to Ohio, and I walked into the shop first thing in the morning, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "We're closing down your shop right now." And the people are there like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "We're closing it down. We've made the thing. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to get your tools, get as many tools as you want to take with you. And then if you need to come back next day, here's it is. We'll get you all the information you need, blah, blah, blah." Sometimes that's just the right thing to do.
Sure. Yeah. I will tell you one of the things I've often said is, and this is making tough decisions without delaying it just to make everyone comfortable. But if you try and make everyone comfortable, try and make everyone happy, what do you end up doing? You end up making no one happy. And in the world of business, in the world of leadership and HR, for example, an employee has repeated issues, right? The coaching's occurred, the expectations are clear, the behavior continues. And at some point, keeping that person is causing damage to the team. And I've seen it. And I've seen it. Now with me as an HR director, I'm always having to factor in the legal ramifications too. Could there be some legal ramifications? But when the damage to the team and people are looking at you, and I've seen this, and they're talking amongst themselves. Why are we keeping this person here? Why do they have naked pictures of someone? I mean, but and it causes damage to the team, to the guests, to the management credibility. Sometimes that hard decision is kind for the organization. It's hard on that individual, but it still is the best decision to make.
Yeah, and I would say one thing I would add to that is I think in our last podcast, maybe a couple weeks ago, you mentioned about terminating somebody, and like a year later, 2 years later, the guy saw you and it's like, "Chuck, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for doing that. Otherwise, I would have stayed here forever." And so again, right, we don't know the outcome, but in a lot of cases, it is the best move for that person because they're just not the right fit.
Yeah, listeners, if I have to say one thing, sum it all up, delaying accountability for someone is really not compassion. So boom, drop the mic.
All right, we dropped the mic.
John, I love this. We've been talking about this infographic from Dr. Oliver Degnan, 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 and he's got 5 more infographic topics about being kind, but you can still be certain things. And I'd love to just pick up the conversation next week and talk about those other 5.
Sounds great. Let's do it. Let's talk about it.
All right. See you next week.
All right. Bye.